Thank you so much. Well, welcome. This is going to be a very interesting healing at the well today because, we are in the counting of the Omer. So this week is the week on humility. And I just happened to my normal time, I came across this video that it is by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it has it's neuroscience is usually what I study. So, but it will challenge you in a way, and because it will, obviously he's not. Well, I'm saying obviously he is not that he says a believer, at least not in the way we are, because there is a lot of mixture. You're going to see things there like meditation and things like that. And so I'm warning you, I need you to be able to watch this and have paper and pencil, because what we're going to do is we're going to be kind of like critiquing something that the world has given us. But like everything, you can eat the meat and spit out the bones, and don't let those bones choke you. So there is, I'm not endorsing any of when he talks about meditation, I see it as the meditation that we are called to do in the word. And there is a lot of things that I put the grid, I put the lenses from the word on me, and I don't let any of that bend me out of shape. I glean what I can, things that match with scripture in my mind and in my heart. I can pick them up, and I like to write those things down. Things that you're going to watch that will be they're going to probably trigger something in you that you're going to remember, or you would probably want to talk about or ask questions about that. That is what this is. So we're here, all of us, at the well with our Savior. We have our Messiah with us, and we are just sitting here waiting for him to heal us. We all need healing. We all need restoration and refreshment from him. And this is what we're doing. And we are just going to, and if we need to, well, that's going to be a little hard. We will have questions and answers and all that during the recording time. We can always, at the end, when we finish, have a little bit more of a private time that you may want to ask something specifically, which is fine, but that you may not want to be on the recording. But I hope that this becomes a time for us to wrestle with the word and what we see, because we live in a life right now that it is very, very social media geared and moved and driven. And there is nothing wrong with seeing things, acknowledging. There is a lot of really good research done, and usually are done by people that, whether they are believers or not, they don't confess to be in those videos because they're trying, I guess, to reach everyone. I don't know. All I know is that there is nothing new under the sun. Our Father is the owner of every good and perfect thing, comes from the Father of lights, and that's how I see it. So I hope I don't offend anyone with the video. It's about 11 minutes that we're going to watch together. And then please do take notes, and let's really take this apart and take it through wash it through the word of God, and allow it to minister to us. So I am inviting you to join me in that. So let me share my screen. Okay, and let me also share the, where are you? More. Share the sound. Okay, and please, I'm gonna minimize this so so that you can see the whole thing. So I'm no longer there, but do let me know if you can see it. You can unmute yourself and say yes or no. Here it goes.
70% of the time, people in their waking lives, they live in a very protective state. They live in a state of stress or in a state of survival. In fact, it's such a program that we don't know that we're doing this. We're always spanning the environment to determine if it's safe or not. And if something appears out of the predictable or unknown, it alerts us. And we move into a state of arousal and we begin to turn on the very systems that begin to say danger, threat, possible scenario that's not safe. And when that happens, we literally begin to anticipate an outcome. And when we do that, we're always preparing for what could go wrong. And we begin to create the emotions ahead of the experience of what happens if it goes wrong, whether it's fear, anxiety, worry, sadness, pain. We do that unconsciously. That's what a program is. And that becomes the habit. So if you're living in a world where men have to provide and show a certain amount of success and be competitive, then you're not going to open your heart. It's not a time to do that. It's a time to survive and thrive in an environment. And yet, in our work, I see men that if they practice opening their hearts, and it's just being a child again, being a boy again, being curious, being wondering, being free, allowing yourself to let go. And for men, we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want, for something greater to occur. Now, the side effect of that, when men truly do this, I've seen them instantaneously heal from things, from serious heart conditions where they couldn't take more than 40 steps without having an angina reaction, severe chest pain, to stage 4 cancer. The house of cards, when it falls, energy moves into a different place and the body begins to release 13 or 1400 different chemicals that begin to restore and repair the body. So to the intellectual mind, if a man begins to understand that when they open their heart, they could heal. When they open their heart, they can lead from a different consciousness, that it's actually an advantage, and they understand the science of why in their rational mind, then they go after it. Now they're in hot pursuit of it because it makes sense to them. But there's not a lot of evidence or support in our environment for men to be vulnerable. And yet the latest research shows that vulnerability is one of the 5 top qualities for a great leader. So when men begin to think this through, they start to slowly by slowly, just like a flower blooming, petal by petal, they start trusting a little bit more, they start opening up a little bit more, they start getting happier, they start breaking down the wall, the facade that they've created to have an appearance of being a certain way for the world and yet feeling so empty inside of them. They start realizing that the joy that they want never came from success, never came from wealth or popularity or whatever men do, but it really comes from within. So we give them numerous opportunities to practice, numerous opportunities to connect. And the heart opens also when you care for another person, when you care for other people, when you give, when you experience gratitude. So a lot of times men, when we do our healings, when we heal other people, you got to be in your heart. And in a very indirect and sneaky way, I know that when I get men in that state and their passion to truly give, that's why they provide with such intensity, is framed in a different way, the heart opens up, and then they become more like a child again. They become free and relaxed and less rigid. So it goes against the program, and it just requires a little bit of knowledge, a greater understanding, me pushing them to that point where they start really going for it, and then setting up enough experiences for them to have it. Now, by the same means, you look at a person that could be a female that was abused as a child. She doesn't understand why she lives her life a certain way, but it's that experience that has confused her or caused her to close off from feeling certain things as well. And when she gets in situations that are unsafe, that create similar emotions, she reverts back to that little child that triggers something, and she doesn't understand why she does that. And so when you give somebody like that enough opportunities to feel safe, they're going to come up against that wall, that event. And when they move through it, their body is going to experience the freedom it felt before that event 30 years ago. And there'll be a complete reorganization of information in the body. There'll be a reorganization of body's physiology. So then when you see a person then stand on the stage, who's a man who's in his late 60s, who has a severe heart condition, and he tells his story of his struggles and how hard it was for him to open his heart, and how unhealthy he was, and all the things he did medically, all the things he did with his diet, matter to matter, all the things he did with psychotherapy that really helped him to understand why he is the way he is, but never really giving him the instructions, the formula of how to get out of it. And he tells his story of what happened to him, and he articulates it beautifully. And you look out in the audience of 1,000 people, and you see men crying, because he's reaching them on some level. And he doesn't look like a movie star, and he doesn't look particularly young or successful, or looks just like everybody else, just a common person. And he tells the story of what happened to him during the walking meditation, and how he experienced in one walking meditation that he could walk the whole entire beach for the first time in 20 years without any chest pain. And he was doubting, like, this can't be. What happened? Well, he got so involved in becoming a different persona, a different personality, that he left the old person behind. And his body was believing that he was literally in the new life. And all of a sudden, in a matter of seconds, his body begins to respond. Now, he articulated in great detail his doubt in front of an audience, because when that happens, you start disbelieving. So he goes out the next day and he says, now that I can walk, today is the day. Why not become somebody else, become my future self? So now, in the same passion he did to provide for his children, to provide for his family, to create a good life for himself and his loved ones, he goes out with that same passion, but he directs it inward to himself. He walks on that beach. I was standing right next to him. He says to the audience, in one moment I felt the level of love that I had never felt in my entire life. And he said, and then I heard somebody screaming. And then I realized it was me, that I had never, the energy that was in my body caused me to, I had to let it out. And he said, and I had never felt anything like, I was standing right next to him. And he tells that story to 1,000 people. And I'm watching the men in the audience moved out of their normal self. Not from some Hollywood production, not from some movie, but evidence right in front of you. It's like the 4-minute mile. Once the 4-minute mile is broken, or was broken, everybody started, in a matter of weeks, everybody started breaking the 4-minute mile, because we crossed the level of consciousness, a limit, and that was permission for everybody to believe it as well. That's what's happening in our work. So men then, when they watch a man have that moment, that's all they need. Is once they see it, there's evidence. then not only do we leave a footprint in consciousness that another man can do it, a step for them in the field to step into, but when there's evidence in three-dimensional reality, you cannot forget that person. And you say to yourself, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And if he's 66 years old and he couldn't take more than 40 steps, and I'm got a bad knee, or I'm walking with a crane or a crutch or whatever, well, hell, all I got to do is do what he did. And all of a sudden you have these people as a community beginning to unify, a living organism, a species of human beings that are beginning to understand that there's more things that are possible. And all of a sudden it becomes a collective consciousness, and then the miracles keep happening. So all we need is that one person in the beginning. And when they tell their story in humility and in grace and in simplicity, in curiosity, it gives people permission to begin to step out. And so I'm so proud of our community. I'm so proud of our culture, because we have men now that know how to open their hearts, and they can lead with an open heart. And God, we need enough of those. And we have women who have taken care of their families and sacrificed and compromised and held things together and put themselves second for their children and for their family and their loved ones, and never really had a moment to get clear on what they wanted. And now they're turning their love inward, and they're getting very clear on their intention, and they're doing amazing things. So it requires the balance between our head and our hearts. We can't not have our brains involved and just open our hearts. We got to direct that energy. That's what our brain does. It's a compass. It directs us somewhere, and the emotion is the energy that drives us there. So when you have coherence in the brain, and you have coherence in the heart, now you have greater effects on the nature of reality.
Cool. Love it. Okay. Are we back?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so anybody wants to start and share something? I didn't want to give it away, but I wanted to also for us to think about how can we be a healing factor in our husbands' lives, in our children, and our parents. So, but anybody has any input, anything that you would like to share? Nobody's gonna talk?
So, well, I'll go first real quick. I'll break it open. I think
Thank
the one thing I was hearing, and it just made reminders, just it hit me when he was talking about being able to walk on the beach, and as he was doing his meditation, and of course we're told to meditate on the word. And as we do that, what most don't understand is the power that's happening in our mind and the renewing that's happening in our mind. And when our minds are renewed, it's opening up channels. And when it's opening up channels, it's releasing hormones, and it's releasing healing things in our body. And so I was thinking about how beautiful that is, that as we are spending that time in meditation, it's scientifically proven if you watch someone praying, it's watching the healing that can happen. And I've had many physicians who encourage, they'll say pray or meditate because, they'll try to be politically correct about it. Right. But it's amazing the work that can be done in just meditating on the word. And I think I would ask you if you have tips on encouraging. I think sometimes our spouses may not be as readily, even for ourselves. Maybe we're busy. Maybe you have a little more masculine characteristics. I'll say it a little bit more. And you can't stop. I got to stop and meditate. It just takes too long. Or I have to stop and pray. It takes too long. Do you have any thoughts on how to encourage that?
Well, one of the things that, obviously we learned from Yeshua himself was that he walked it out himself. We learn from each other when it becomes something natural and something that we do regularly. It becomes something that you want to either emulate or you even think about it like, I really don't do that. I wonder what that feels like, or I want to try that. I know that when I started doing the 21-day brain detox, I started that first week, and I remember my husband saying, I can see some difference in you, and I want to learn that. I want to do that. And he, it was so neat. He just went online and got journals for both of us, and we both started. He does it totally different than me. And but it was so neat that he saw something and he said, I want to do that. So and I remember that year we were, I think we had started, I don't know, in January, and February is our anniversary. So we went to our timeshare and we literally did it together. We said, okay, well, we're here. There's, it wasn't like a big place or anything like that. So we're just going to do it together since we're in the same room. And it was really neat. I think it was one of those moments that I will remember very, very vividly, because we walked it out together, and just hearing, I'm more of a outspoken person and shares obviously more, just like most women are, my own emotions, etc., and everything I'm feeling. I'm just an open book. But hearing him sharing his really helped me to see areas that I didn't, things that we're both reading the same thing, and where my mind went with that and where his mind went with that. So that, I would really encourage, something like that, where, you can do, even if obviously not every day, our lives are busy and it's hard, even though we do try to, at least every morning when he goes to work, science have shown how when our hearts are together, when you hug and you put your heart against each other, after a few minutes, they actually get in sync together. You can bring, it's something that God has created in all of us. And to say to each other, and we're different in this, everybody does it, feels different when they experience something, but I just love to hear his voice in my ear, and just hear, we say to each other the Aaronic benediction. And when I hear his voice in my ear, it's like I close my eyes and I feel like my father is hugging me. Like Abba is right there. So he becomes that voice, that reminder that my father holds me, and that I don't have to fear. So I would say, anything that you can experience and that you can do it together will enhance that. And even when we are apart, he may be traveling or I may be traveling, we just call each other and we pray the priority, on the phone for each other. And, little things like that will help nurture that and make it, the Dr. Dispenza was saying over and over in that video, how important it is to have that, to give that, that safety, that because men and women are created differently. And it is important that we create that safe space for them to feel that they can really share with us and they are safe with us.
Aren't you hearing that over and over? All ladies, we should be hearing that. We keep hearing about how our job about creating the spaces. I mean, for our spouses, for our children, for our friends, about creating the spaces. And thank you for that, sharing that, because I know for me, the same as with Randy and I, even something happened today. I stop and I grab him and I start praying for him, and he now does the same thing with me. But it's same thing with our children. If you're modeling that and you're creating a space where that happens, it just becomes what you do. This is how we do this. And I would encourage women who say, well, I want them to do it without me telling them to. Please, please, I'm just asking if you could put that feeling aside, because that is not a healthy perspective on this, right, Simi?
That's correct. You are so right on that. And I am so guilty of that myself. We think that that's the way that's the natural way, right? and it is not, and it's not. And what we do is we tripped ourselves, we tripped them into this, and then it becomes, can I do this? No, she may get angry at that, or she's angry at me. She wants me to do this, and I don't know what to do, and she doesn't tell me, and it's just such an unhealthy way when it's so much easier to say, I love this. Like, he likes to see my face. It's funny. He likes to see my face when we pray, and I'm like, okay, can we do this for a little bit? And then can you hold me? I want to hear your voice in my ear. And he's like, okay. So, we're different, everybody's different, and we need to, this is what I like and I tell him, when you hug me, this is how I feel. This is what I need. And then he goes, oh, okay. That's all I needed to say. This is what I need. And he's like, it's like when we were watching the video, it kept saying how men are created to provide, and they are very willing. They work really hard because they think we need the money. So I'm going to work hard so she can have the money. And, that is just a normal way of thinking, because God wired them that way. But that doesn't mean that if you let him know exactly what is it that you need, emotionally, he's not going to not provide. Actually, he will be glad to provide that for you. I've never once said, this is what I want you, and he goes, well, go and get it somewhere else. I'm not going to give it to you. Never. That just doesn't happen. When there is love, when there is that desire to love one another the best way we can, we're going to do it because that's what we want. If he tells me, this is what I like, whether that's the way I would have done it myself or not, that's the other thing that I wanted to point out, that we tend to, I like very soft strokes in my hair. Okay, that's just the way my parents did. They would just play with my hair, but it would be very soft. He loves a scratch, a head scratch, and squeeze. And I'm like, that's not what I want at all. But who cares? It's not about me. If he wants his head scratched, I'll scratch his hair. If he wants squeeze, just squeeze, even though it's not like, what I would like to be done to me. But then at the same time, he is very tender when he does that with my hair. So it's one of those things that you just learn. And of course, we've been married 28 years and it took a long time to get here, but you can start at a young, if you're a new couple, or even if you've never done that, you have been married all your life and you just, like the older generation was more like, well, don't you know I love you? I married you, didn't I? I pay for the bills. I'm here. I'm not over there, drinking in a bar. So of course I love you. But it's one of those things that I remember my parents asking them, and they said, well, I never thought that he needed to tell me that. I knew he did. Or if you ask your dad, he says, I thought, I'm pretty sure she knew I loved her. So you just didn't express it. So you can start that no matter where you're at. You can start that, because these are things that help us. I love the whole message of going through the beach and realizing there is more. If I really allow my mind to go there, I can experience things that I probably never would have if I didn't purposely do it. You know, I love the point that, and we see it in the way we understand the Bible. We know what halakha is. It's our walk. It is the way we live. It is the way we walk our faith out. And a lot of 80% of everything that we walk out in our life comes through our eyes. 80%, that's a lot of percentage. So a lot of times we get so involved out here in what we see that we don't go in. And you remember when we start in Genesis, one of our portion is Lech Lecha. And that is go for yourself, go into yourself. It's a reflective, it goes inside. And that is something that if we do the portions every year and we go through that, it is something that we will repeat over and over and over, that it is important that we do that, because we do not change from the outside in, we change from the inside out. So if we are not reflective, if we don't go for ourselves, our faith, that's why we do patterns, that we repeat things over and over every year, is because our Father knows that if we don't do that, we don't change. We may look good to everyone, we may change our outside appearance, but if our heart doesn't change, there is no long-lasting change that is permanent. So I have a question for you. When he starts talking about vulnerability, how do you see that? How do you see your husbands, your sons, your brothers, your fathers? Are they able to open their hearts with you? Okay, ladies, this is going to be very boring if I'm the only one talking and I'm asking you questions and you don't answer. We need to interact. I know that it gets, let's see.
We have our talkers on here too. Danielle, Mary Catherine, I don't know if she's feeling very well. Even, come on, Stacy, Jen,
I know.
hop in there.
I'm
We got
unmuted.
Cindy.
I'm unmuted. I have a comment.
Yay.
Good.
Well, hi, Simi and Charlie and everyone. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask, so I'm not on camera, but I wanted to hop on in here. And it's funny because I've never listened to one of these live, but the content so far is very interesting to me. And so what was your question again, Simi? I had an answer and I lost the question. The vulnerability?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can speak for my situation and my marriage, and I know that my husband has a very hard time being vulnerable. But one of the things that I've learned is that in order for him to be vulnerable, I have to be vulnerable. And I can't come at him in a certain way. I have to really be reflective and think about my word choices. I have to think about the approach, because there's never been two more opposite people than my husband and myself. I mean, we're probably pretty typical opposites attract type relationship. Right. But I think part of it is that you really have to think about your husband's level of self-esteem when you approach, and you want to think about making someone vulnerable, because if he's already starting from a place of maybe lower self-esteem or some past hurt issues that he's not dealt with, especially if you know that. I mean, sometimes you don't know. I know some serious things that my husband has dealt with in his past that still really haunt him. And so anytime I approach certain subjects, the first thing I think about, if I want him to be vulnerable and open up, is, am I going to hit those points of hurt? Like what's the subject matter? What direction am I going? What type of topic do I want to approach? and I have to approach them very different subjects very differently. But what I've learned in my own marriage is that if I can start by being vulnerable myself and show him that it's okay and it's not a point of weakness, or that I'm not coming at you to attack you or to lower your self-confidence, your self-esteem, then typically I can get him to, and it takes time. Literally, it reminds me of like kneading challah bread. It's like you can start with the loaf and you start kneading it, but the more you work it, the more pliable it gets, and you can start to shape it and form it. But that's what I think of when I want to approach heavy conversations and seek a level of vulnerability, is that I may have to work the dough for quite a while before I get any sort of response. And I have to be patient in that, because as a woman, and I know some of the women on the call, we're ready for answers and we'd like answers right now. And let's just talk about this and let's be frank, but I can't do that with him. And so I've had to learn to sort of knead the dough and be a little soft and think about my touch points very, very carefully. But if I do those things, and we've been married 11 years, and it didn't work very well the first 5 years because I came at it wrong, or I came at it in a way that he just couldn't respond to. He felt very attacked, kind of like you were talking about the soft touch versus the scratch. Just because I like it one way does not mean he likes it that way. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking when you said that. I thought, oh yes, the vulnerability, it's so hard, but if you take your time and you're patient, and this is like a love language thing, you just have to speak their language, and you have to come at them in a way that they'll respond to, then typically if I do that, I have a little better success.
That's awesome. And I love that you mentioned the love language, because that is something that we learned really into our marriage. We had been married a long time before we actually heard that teaching. And of course we're going through it and realize, yep, I can see our love language. I can see our kids' love language. And it is, and then when you hear it expressed and described, then you realize, oh wow, so that's why this and that's why that. And all along he's been telling me he loves me, or she's been telling me she loves me. It's just not understanding that sometimes can create a lot of anxiety and not knowing why one or the other acts away the way they act. But another thing to keep in mind is going back to the way we were wired. Women we're the nurturing one. We're the ones that are taking care at home of their children, raising them, cooking and cleaning, and all those things that when we're able to do if we're not working. That requires a lot of listening, a lot of paying attention to details and things like that, that usually is not the case for men. Men have been wired to go out there and make a living, and they can be excellent in what they do, and they may pay attention to a lot of details in their jobs for what they do, but that doesn't always translate to the home. So that being the case, given your analogy of the challah bread is an excellent one, because that is a little bit more rigid. It's more like this is the goal and this is what I do. That communication, they've never been married before. They usually, depending on the relationship with their mothers, that was not in most men's lives. It's not like they were sitting around and eating ice cream and talking about it, or watching chick flicks, or that part that we do so naturally. They didn't do that. They came in, they went out, it's very different. So it doesn't have the same movement that for a woman's heart. So just like we do that with our children, why would it be any different with them? That has to be softened, that have to be massaged and make it pliable and worked with. And that shouldn't be something like, oh, weird, I have to do this. No, that's just life. That's just the way it is. And there shouldn't be, there shouldn't be the expectation just because I'm already, an open book, that you have to be too. And we make that mistake. I know I had many times thinking, well, I just told you this. Why aren't you telling me that? And just creating this false expectations that is not the way that's you said it also, or I think it was Charlie, about opposites attract. No, it was you, Jen. And why do you think our Father did that? He did that so that we would work at it. I have to work to make this happen between us, and he has to work too. We have to come to that happy medium, whether sometimes we agree to disagree or not. But if we don't work at it, we get a lousy bread. It's going to be stiff on one side and probably mushy on the other side, because we are going to do it and do it and do it until something happens. And that doesn't work. That's not even counting the Omer, going through this from Passover to Shavuot. We have 50 days every year, and he does it again in Elul, and he does, it's just a way that he knows he has to massage our hearts, even our hearts, if we think we're that open and we're that soft and all that, that even our hearts needs to be massaged by our Father. And then we work on each other, and it is a work of art. You just don't get a bucket of paint and a bucket of paint and a bucket of paint, and then all of a sudden the house will be painted. If you don't work at it, it won't happen. It will stay there, and the house will have no color. You have to open it, and you have to start working at it and paint it. God gives us everything, but we have to do something with it. It doesn't come just boom, already with the color that we want, right? Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I want to go to the part where he is talking. So we're talking about all these different things, not just for our husbands, our children and brothers, fathers, in our lives, but let's go to ourselves right now. We have to be like a child. What does that mean to you? You guys are,
Cindy, what does that mean to you, Cindy?
Okay. Sorry, I had unmuted myself to say something, and then I guess the background music, you could hear it too much, way off in the other room. But okay, so what it means to me is like, if we have to go back to child, it's not like the injured child or the hurt child, it's that trusting child way back before, to go back to that place, so that we can open up our hearts and be in that safe place. I don't, the part of this that really got me was the notion of illness being misplaced energy. And then that emotions direct that energy. So like, and then that reminded me of the meditation on the word. So if we're meditating on the word, our bodies can't help, our emotions can't help but like be in that positive receptive place. And so it's like we're led more toward that healing. Whereas if we're just in the world and in our own minds, we're all like negative, or those kind of things, and that misdirects the energy and then traps the energy, and then we get the illnesses. And I found that really interesting.
Yeah, it is. One of the things that really came alive this year for me was the sacrifice of the priest when Aaron was supposed to bring the fat, the kidneys, and the liver, and understanding what those represent. And the toxins are embedded in fat. So we're supposed to bring that to the altar and burn it there. So yes, those toxins go somewhere, and our body is so smart. Our Father has created ways to protect us. And when I ingest something that my body doesn't know what to do with it, if I have fat, that's where it goes. If I don't, my body will create the fat to cover it and to protect me from it. And so yes, that goes there. Now let's say the kidneys. We have the kidneys that is the organ that represents and acts as a fear factor, so to speak, in our bodies. Because if you can think about somebody that is extremely fearful, what would be the first thing that you know? And we see this, and sometimes we laugh at it thinking that it's funny, but it's not. It's intense fear will make you pee on your pants, right? Because there is a release of your bladder. That is it has to let go. It has to, there has to be a way to bring that down. And one of the things, and usually by that moment, it's like it goes, you realize, okay, what was that? So the kidneys will house that fear. And then we have the liver. The liver houses anger. And we have that. So we can see how, and we've heard before about psychosomatic illnesses, because there is a mental part of it and there is a somatic part of it. Soma is body, and it's somewhere in our body. That energy has to be, it has to go somewhere. And so we see people when they do any type of detox, then they'll find that, if it's unforgiveness, there's a lot of testimonies of people not, being healed of arthritis, because that goes to your joints. And it's just so many things that we can see how that, we do walk that out. One of the things that I was thinking when I thought of a child is that, the first 7 years of your life, you are in a brain wave that is like a blanket, like a clean tape, so to speak. I'm dating myself here with that, since a lot of younger generation doesn't even know what a tape is. But it's a clear CD where you are really programming our children, right? So when I think of becoming a child, is going back to that time in our lives where we were so eager and ready to be programmed. So how do we program ourselves is through the word, and that meditating in his word. And we if we can go to that place where I want to be the woman that he created me to be, and not who I have become, that is not reflected in his word. I may not really have a good, my life and my actions and my behaviors may not be under the grid of his word. So they need to go, whatever is not lining up with the word has to go. And can we do that? Because sometimes we think, well, that is nice. That's when I was a kid. I'm not a kid anymore. Well, that is not true. If he says that we have to become a child, that means we can. And there are ways for us to reprogram our minds through the meditation and through the word of God, it says very clearly, it is written, it goes out to accomplish what he sends out to do and never comes back void. And that is our Savior. Messiah is the living word of God. He sent his word to earth, and he is going, when he went back the first time and he's coming a second time for us, he is not going back empty-handed. He will not, what he got sent him out to do, he will accomplish it, because that's who God is. He accomplishes everything he wants. This is his world. He made it and he will accomplish his will. Nothing will thwart that. So when you think about that, that's what I'm thinking of, all these patterns in our lives. You know, we have Shabbat every week. We have the feasts every year. We have, you know, the times of like this 50 days that we go into ourselves. He says to Moses, actually wrote this in Psalm 90:12, it says, teach us to number our days so that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. What does that mean? How do I present him a heart of wisdom? It's just like, you know, a click and now I have wisdom. No, I learned that. I am growing in that. I am searching. I am trying to be, remember in day 2 of creation, there is the upper waters and the lower waters, where we are literally made full. We have a greater percentage of water in our bodies that actually, and so does the world, than that's solid. So when you think about that, there is a mirroring that has to happen there, where the earth it looks like heaven, right? So that's that day of separation, because we want to get rid of anything that doesn't look like our Father. We had a blood moon 2 days ago, and that brought me a brand new understanding of why is it red. Is red because the moon is supposed to reflect the sun, and when it does, it's white, right? What happens when the world gets in between? The earth was right in between the moon and the sun, and that moon became red. Is the shadow of the world. And we have to remember that if we are operating and we are reflecting the world, we will be red. We'll be like the beast, red, right? Like Esau. So do we want to be red, or do we want to be white? And in order to be white, we have to reflect the sun. We have to reflect that which gives us life, and that would give, and he who gives us life is our Father. So if I want to be more like him, especially during these days, I want to concentrate and focus on him so that I reflect him and not look at the world, and then you get the world. That's what you're going to see in me. If that's what I'm looking day in, day out, I will be that to those that see me, unfortunately. And I know, because this happens every time, I'm so sorry for those that are not live and then they just listen, because they're like, well, there was no talking there. But as soon as we stop the recording, these girls come alive. So I am going to end this right here. I hope that if you are watching, that you're able to, you can watch that video over and over. You know, this is the beauty of this type of calls, is that they're recorded. You can go back and watch them again and meditate on that. Think about all the things and let me tell you, I've watched this several times, and today I took notes of different things that I didn't take notes of the times before. It is amazing how much you will glean out of things when you are in different moments, and even different moments during the day. You will, and a different day, you will also. So I hope that was a blessing to you. And let's stop the recording so I can actually read all this chat.